John Kliger was born during a very difficult period. Jews were being rounded up and deported in Europe. Houses were being bombed, soldiers were being killed. His father was fighting in France and North Africa, and he was evacuated up north with his mother's family, and he remained there for most of the war. After the war, his parents settled in Cricklewood. He went to Christ College School with Sandy's brother, and Sandy attended Henrietta Barnett with John's sister. But despite living nearby and various interactions, he only met Sandy in Israel in the 1960s. After their engagement, the Six-Day War broke out. John was working at IBM, and everyone was drafted apart from him and his boss. Their emergency job was to ensure that all the soldiers got their food portions while they were fighting. John and Sandy returned to England in 1967 and got married. They moved to Wembley in 1972 and were active members of the Shul and the Avner School. They performed in all the Purim spiels, they were on the PTA of the school, and John was always involved with the maintenance of the building. Someone mentioned, "There is not one nail in the building that doesn't have John's fingerprint on it." John was also an active member of the Chevra Kadisha. He continued to work in computers and often showed up at the house with a computer the size of a fridge. We would often accompany him to the office on Sundays or Christmas, as he was the Shabbos Goy, or the Yom Tov Jew, of the office. In 1984, the Kligers went on Aliyah and moved to Ra'anana. Most of us will just remember his funny side. When he would wash the Kohanim's hands, he would announce, "This washing station is for the upper class Kohanim only, and the lower class Kohanim should go over there." Even in the hospital, he would announce to the nurses that they need to add more gin to his drip. Or one time he got a new room and complained there was no bucket with champagne in it. As soon as he retired, he went to volunteer for Leket, an organization that saves food from waste and makes sure it reaches the needy. He received a number of awards for his work at Leket. On Purim 2017, he took very ill. His last mitzvah was a Chabadnik came to the ward to read him the Megillah. At first, the idea of having a yahrzeit on Purim was not such a nice idea, but the family realized that it was actually appropriate for someone with a sense of humor of a clown to say his farewell on Purim. In the end, he passed away on Shushan Purim, so his yahrzeit wasn't on Purim, and we just hope that some things from his hard disk will always remain with us on our floppy disks.
We remember the many wonderful Sedarim we shared together, and those early memories that we had with the whole family, especially of dear John, will always remain with us. Now, as you would all expect, John was a good friend to so many, always willing to help wherever and whenever needed, something that remained with him throughout his life. And as you would expect, John's sense of fun was always to the fore, and he was often in a starring role in so many Purim spiels and PTA musical shows that were produced in Wembley Synagogue. To this day, these memories of John still bring a smile to our faces. And as you would expect, John was a very valued member of the Wembley community. And amongst other things, he served with devotion in the Chevra Kadisha, of which I was also privileged to be a member. And as you would expect, John had a car. And as you would expect, it was a bit of a noisy banger. In the solemn and the peaceful silence of so many nights at Bushy Cemetery, we always knew well ahead of his arrival that John was coming. We knew by the rattling noise in the distance. And when the Kliger family made Aliyah, they were very missed by all their friends. but John kindly donated his car to the Chevra Kadisha so that we could continue using it. And even at those many further occasions after the Kligers were living in Israel and we were still back in London, the memories of John continued to warm our hearts.
I want everyone to understand my American accent. Sandy, thank you for honoring me with an opportunity today to remember our beloved John Kliger. I had the pleasure of knowing John for over 16 years after our Aliyah to Ra'anana, but would like to briefly focus on what I will call the Leket years. In popular culture, and I imagine generally in real life, many people struggle with the question of what to do after retirement. It gnaws at them, causes tension at home, and ultimately, if you're not a golfer or willing to drive an Uber cab, can cause a real struggle. Not John. And everything I say shows what type of guy John was. Frankly, I don't know if John had any hobbies. I have no doubt he was a caring father, grandfather, and spouse, but I was rarely privy to any of that. What I was fortunately privy to was only one thing: a single-minded determination to help those in need from nearly the day of his retirement until Hashem took him away from us, with much work left to do. I have told many that for me and for those of us at Leket, John was a godsend. He would do anything to help. He wasn't some prissy volunteer or frankly prissy staff member or chairman unwilling to do the dirty work. He would drive, he would clean, he would make phone calls at all hours through health and sickness. If I could have cloned John, I would have a much smaller budget and certainly less frequent flyer miles. I'm scared to think how many additional staff we will need with him gone, because he really was one in a million. John, we miss you, and I think you would like to know, if you don't already, that this week Leket broke all records in the amount of food we collected and distributed to those in need. We will continue to push hard and make you proud. Thank you.
The 12 bottles of whiskey. I had 12 bottles of whiskey in my cellar, and my wife told me to empty the content of every bottle down the sink, or else.
Doesn't mind yet.
So I said I would, and proceeded with the unpleasant task. I withdrew the cork from the first bottle and poured the contents down the sink, with the exception of one glass, which I drank.
Oh.
I extracted the cork from the second bottle, and did likewise, with the exception of one glass, which I drank. I withdrew the cork from the third bottle and emptied the good old booze down the sink, except one glass, which I drank. And I pulled the cork from the fourth sink and poured the bottle down the glass, which I drank. And I pulled the bottle from the cork of the next and drank one sink out of it, and then poured the rest down the glass. I pulled the sink out of the next glass and poured the cork down the bottle. I pulled the next cork out of my throat, poured the sink down the bottle, and drank the glass. Then I corked the sink in the glass, poured the drink, and drank the cork. And when I had emptied everything, I steadied the house with one hand, while counting the bottles, corks, and glasses with the other. It came to 29. To make sure, I counted them again, and when they came to 74. And as the house came by, I counted them again, and finally I had all the bottles and corks and glasses counted, except one house and one cork.
Amen.